Hello and welcome to another edition of One on One with Matlomola Morake, the women's story. With this show, we trying to profile the sporting side of our guests, but more than that, we're going deeper into just understanding who they are and what makes them tick. I mean, how are they away from the TV screens, away from the football pitches, away from conferences? For some who do conferences, and do they love gardening? Do they cook? What do they do in their spare time? I mean, this is what this show is about. And today. We've got a very special guest, a friend of mine for a very long time, ex-colleague at the South African Football Association. Name is Fran Hilton-Smith. And for many that are in women's football, the first name that you think of when you think of women's football is this lady, Fran Hilton-Smith. Freddie, welcome.
Thank you, Matlamola. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. You were one of the people that I said she must be on this show because women's football is Fran.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Fran, you are an author, a musician, a KEF SAFA instructor, a speaker, a former coach, an avid traveler, and I know also you are a gardener. You love your gardening. But before we go into anything, the first question I always ask my guest is, who is Fran? Before all these other things came into being. I mean, where you grew up, how you grew up.
Well, I grew up in my father was a goalkeeper in football. My mother was a fantastic musician, pianist, fantastic pianist. My father was a great singer. So I grew up in a very sporty, musical environment. My mother taught phys ed. She was a teacher. So I had all these great influences growing up. And that influenced my choices in life, really, when it comes to my career in football and music.
So it's not a surprise that you had music and you also dealt a lot in football.
Yeah, I did. I think one of the biggest influencing factors was when I was a teenager, 13, 14. We moved into a house in Germiston, Driehoek, that was right opposite the Caledonian Stadium, which at the time a team called Germiston Callies played. So every day we could have easy access. We'd walk across to the field, and that's where I actually started playing football in my first girls' team when I was about 15. And that really influenced my career, being at the games, and the players would kick soccer balls over the wall, and my father would hide them in the dustbin, and then we'd play soccer. So that's how it all started.
We'll come to the music. We'll go to the music a little later. Football, was that your first love?
Yeah, definitely it was. I think, and I wrote about it in my book, was when I was living also in Primrose there, I was 11, 12, 13. There just didn't seem to be a lot of girls my age. My sister is younger than me. She had lots of girlfriends, but I just seemed in my age to have a lot of boys who I became friends with. And of course, they played football. So I've kind of had to force my way into that. I started as the goalkeeper because they didn't want girls hanging around. And I slowly progressed to playing on the field because I was quite talented, a natural left footer, and I was a good soccer player. And I think playing with the boys initially for a couple of years really helped me to become a great player in my time. And I represented Eastern Transvaal then for 10 years as a provincial player. Was selected for the national team, but of course we were suspended by FIFA. So I was really lucky to have that beginning in my football of playing with boys.
And I want us to talk a lot about women's football a little later, though. But at that point, did you foresee, do you have a hope, dream that women's football could be something big in this country?
Yeah, I did. I must be honest. I'm talking, yeah, the late 60s, 70s, when I started playing provincial and whatever. And I was quite amazed at the time that there was already structured women's football, the South African Women Football Association. was in action already. Of course, due to the politics of the time, it was mainly white women playing, with champions like Durban province, they were called then Durban, not KwaZulu. They won the women's South African Women Championships for 10 years in a row from those times. We already had Western Province, Free State, a lot of teams, Southern Transvaal, Eastern Transvaal. So I was quite shocked at the level that women's football was already. And then in the late 70s, 80s, the Western Province came along with the Disraelises, the colored girls. And then in the 80s, I befriended, I was playing in Easterns and had some teams. I met the legend Joseph Mkonza. And he'd
What a
started
legend.
he'd started a women's team in the township there and said to me, look, can we come and play with you on a Sunday? So I said, yes, come and bring your ladies. And
But
nobody worried about us. It was still apartheid,
the-
no
I was just about,
mixing.
weren't you afraid of the system back then?
Well, luckily for us, the police, the officials, whatever, weren't really worried about women playing. They thought, oh, these women all running
They're not going to
around.
get anywhere
So
anyway.
they didn't worry about us. So we started mixed football way back when. And that led to great things where, like, Soweto ladies joined our league. And of course, when we got back into FIFA in 1993, the first then official SAFA team, when we joined SAFA as SAFA, had fantastic players like Carbuzita,
Hmm.
Desiree, etc. Great players who went on to make their mark in women's football and get the sport recognition nationally. I mean, some of those players are still legends now.
Your mom was a teacher. Were you also a teacher?
Yeah, I was. I didn't want to be a teacher. I wanted to be a rock musician and a beach bum, actually. And my mother was a teacher, and my father and mother said, no, 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 you must go and do teaching so you've got something to fall back on, and then you can do all these other things. So I taught for 20 years, actually. And when my later career in high schools like Edenvale, Bedfordview, the first thing I did was start football
Football team.
teams for the girls and boys. And it was great because especially the boys would then be very good in my classroom because they wanted to play football. So I didn't have many discipline problems.
Now, fast forward to the days of early days of Banyana Banyana. How did that come about?
Well, we started affiliated to SAFA when they formed and started our first team. And the strangely enough, the first coach of that national team, which wasn't then called Banyana, was a famous coach from England, Southampton, called Terry Payne. He was our first coach. And the manager was a lady called Dora Carroll, who managed the team for about 7, 8 years.
In
And
fact, that name is going to come up again later in
okay.
this chat. But yeah, continue.
Okay. And she was the manager, backbone of the team, and went on to be the work at Reebok doing Kaizer Chiefs, and worked at Kaizer Chiefs for 20 years as a brand manager. So that was and the girls were fantastic players. I mean, we had so many names. Anthea Childs was the captain from Western Province, still a stunning defender. All the Soweto ladies, people from the Western Cape. And of course, in the beginning, it was extremely tough because the team that had already got on the path was Nigeria. They were at the first Women's World Cup in 91 because there weren't other countries. We were suspended. So when we came along in 93, we had a lot of catching up to do. And for many years, it was impossible to beat Nigeria. They hammered us every time, knocked us out of the African, women's championships. And it was only in the 2000s that finally, in a game where Janine van Wyk, the Banyana former captain, was playing, she scored a goal and we beat Nigeria. It was, you may have even been there, I'm not sure, but that was the start. And now, of course, South Africa's the African champions, and Nigeria is not the threat
Like it used
that
to
they
be.
were at senior level. So those were times of growth and struggles. I mean, playing then in the qualifiers, etc., traveling to countries I'd rather never go to, like Nigeria and
Yeah.
DR Congo, and I even went with my under-20s once to Central Africa Republic. We had to hire a jet because planes didn't fly there. It was so war-torn. Was great, very hard struggles for us as the officials and for the players.
But personally, it was also a difficult time for you because your life was threatened at some point.
Yeah, look, we had a lot of struggles in those days because uh, once we got affiliated to SAFA, then I was the president of the Women's
Yes.
SAFA, the Women's Football Association, with my colleagues, one who's still very prolific in football, Mary Jane Sokela
Yes.
from
From Devon
KZN,
Ladies.
Tembi Kumalo from Easterns, and once men, specifically men that were related to Soweto ladies, saw this blossoming, they wanted to run the women's football because they, I think, thought there was money and whatever, which there was no money. The women's football still
Still
struggles
doesn't have
with
money,
money,
yes.
struggles. So all these guys wanted to take over and get rid of all the women and run the game. And it really became dangerous, traumatic for all of us women there. And there were some men. And it in fact led to me writing continuous letters to Steve Chweti, then the Minister of Sport,
Yes, the late Minister of Sport, yes.
various people. And I even wrote to Nelson Mandela. I was cleaning my house the other day and I found the response I got from him about my complaints. And he, in fact, instructed Steve Chweti and the people down the ranks to implement the Picard Commission, which was
Is that where it started?
yeah, it started there. We were the one facet, and the other facet was Thomas Quinati was talking about the football and various money issues. But that's where it all started. And after the commission, the judge's verdict was that SAFA then had failed to assist their women affiliate. And that led to some big changes, a women's committee coming into place. And then, of course, FIFA said that each federation must have a standing committee for women. So that helped to resolve things. But the times were very dangerous. And around the Picard Commission, the women who had to come, like Mary Jane, as witnesses, whatever, had to have security, and their flights had to be changed at the last minute and to protect them. And we had, which was really fascinated me, we had a security tunnel built at the commission to check for guns and knives
Oh
of
my goodness.
people coming in. So it was traumatic. There's no two. So being in women's football wasn't easy. And of course, SAFA, which was run by men in the main, had no interest in women's football at all. So everything was a struggle. The team was sent off to then darkest Africa with no money, no doctor, no
Big clothes.
nothing, no clothes, no. We had all the Bafana leftovers and whatever. So it was very difficult times indeed.
Was it also during that dark period, and I know you may not want to get into the merits of the case, when there were sexual stories around that? How much damage did that do to the game?
Yeah, it did a lot. It still does a lot, but and it's a major concern. But for me, the reality of the situation still is that in women's football around the world, not just here in South Africa, I must be clear, around the world. We've just had the incident in Spain of the women when they won the World Cup, the head honcho being kicked out, and now the court case. But we had the same problems because most of the coaches, management in women's football are men. We have to be realistic. Women haven't had the opportunities. Now, of course, I made it my mission to develop more women coaches, women administrators, but still on the ground, teams are run by men. And it's really an easy area for manipulation of the girls because it's the old story. You want to play on Sunday in the team? Well, you know what
know
has
what to
to
do.
happen. So there's still problems with that, not just in South Africa, in Africa and the world.
What do you think the solution could be?
Well, the development of more women coaches, certainly. And that's why in my years at SAFA, latter years, I made sure that I got former Banyana players who wanted to be coaches to come, and we trained them with help from FIFA, all the licenses, CBA. And that's why now we have 23 women, it's the most in Africa, that have the CAF A license. And
That's
all
quite
the-
massive.
Yeah, it's massive. And Desiree Ellis was part of that, Maud Kumalo, Tina Sonki, Jobalili Beloy. So all the women's teams have women coaches.
In fact, speaking of those names, I saw a picture the other day that you posted not so long ago. You had your Simpiwe Dludlu,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
Tina Sonkembuli, your Maud
yeah.
Kumalo.
Tina's Simpiwe Dludlu is another one. And that takes me to another area where I did a lot of development, and that was starting a women's academy, which I did in Pretoria in 2001, to develop the players at a higher level.
Is that the one called the HPC today?
HPC, yeah, where 24 girls, 25 girls came and lived that were selected. And thanks to my travels with FIFA to USA, Sweden, Germany, I realized that having medical support, education, etc., was crucial for the girls to succeed against the rest of the world. We had to try and Simpiwe Dludlu was one of the HPC girls, as with another girl who came there, well, lady now, Kanilwe Matibela.
Yes.
They went on, and because they were such good players, the university snapped them up because university started playing football and they could study. So Simpiwe Kanil, we have honours, masters in sports science. And now in football, Kanil was the head of Coach Ed at SAFA. Simpiwe is the head of the High Performance Centre. And
she's a football
was the
analyst.
under-17 coach.
yes.
Both of them played in Banyana. So it's been, that's why the success of Banyana is not an overnight sensation. It was years of development, specifically from the HPC. And that's why when Banyana won the WAFCON, the last WAFCON,
In 2022.
14 of the players that were in that team came from the HBC.
Which is quite an achievement.
It's a massive achievement. And when Banyana went to their first World Cup in France, 15 of the players were from HBC. So development and long-term development is the only way to go.
Looking at that, when would you say for you was the turning point for women's football where you sat and said, I'm seeing changes in women's football?
Well, the first change, as I mentioned, was when we were able to beat Nigeria because they were always the people. And then winning SAFA, we started winning tournaments. But for me, obviously, forever will be the first qualification for the Olympics. I think it was
2012 in London.
2012, yeah. That was a massive, massive step forward because forever since we'd started with women's football, the goal was to get to the World Cup. I mean, every camp when I was manager, coach, that was the dream, was to qualify for the Olympics or the World Cup. And finally, we went to the Olympics, and that changed the whole mindset because it's a different world there. And then, of course, qualifying for France, and then
2019.
Australia, getting to the last 16, etc., was massive milestones in women's football. And of course, now being the African champions, I never dreamt in my life I would see that. I really didn't.
If when you talk about those, I mean, London 2012 under Joseph Mkonza, 2016 Olympics under Vera Pauw, and in between there was the under 17 Women's World Cup with Solly Luvengo. Those must have been proud moments for women's football in South Africa.
Absolutely. The under 17s have made us proud too. Yes, qualifying for the first one in Trinidad and Tobago with Solly, who was a great coach. And it's a strange thing I always sticks in my head was in that team was the prolific goal scorer who qualified us for Olympics, World Cups, Jermaine Sepusenwi
Who's now in Mexico.
in Mexico, doing extremely well. And the goalkeeper at the time was Kaylin Swart. And I'll always remember our first game at that World Cup under 17 in
Trinidad
Trinidad.
and Tobago.
I was there as the manager. We played Germany and they hammered us 10-1.
Oh my word.
Gosh, it was a harding. It was a welcome to the real world. But the thing that always stuck in my head was that we scored one goal, and lo and behold, it was Jermaine Sepusenwi. And Kaylin Swart never dropped her head in the goals, even though we were hammered 10. So, and those players are still playing. So continuity is a priority.
Speaking of continuity, after those tournaments, there was then the 2019 France, which you mentioned, as well as 2022 WAFCON and 2023 FIFA World Cup in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, and I was fortunate that since, except for 91 when we were suspended, thanks to FIFA, I've been to every World Cup, which was a big honor for me. And for me personally, it was such a proud moment to be in France and Sydney in Australia and be there with Banyana. It was a dream come true, I must admit. After so many losses in the early years to Nigeria, I never thought we'd get there, and we did.
You once said that as Banyana was preparing for 2019 World Cup, we're going to play the USA. You once said that's a historic moment, playing the number one country in the world.
Absolutely. When I got involved and looking at World Cups, USA were always the benchmark. From 91, they were world champions, 95, 98, blah, blah, blah. Michelle Akers was my kind of role model. And I remember I got lots of videos and stuff sent from FIFA. And every camp, I'd show the girls the USA, that every level they were the champions, they were the benchmark. I was fortunate to be able to camp with the US women's national team once. We had an exchange with US soccer, and I could camp with them and learn how they did things, how they coached. And I came back and brought all that back to not only the women's football, the men as well, because when I did my coaching, licensing, I was the only woman there. All the other guys were, and a lot of them I got involved into women's football, like Joseph and later Augustine and Solly and whatever. And all this information I'd give to everybody, I'd put it out there so that we could grow women's football. But USA were still are a benchmark with everything they do. And when I started our performance center, the whole structure, how to do it, I learned in my travels in America.
How was winning the WAFCON for you? What emotions?
Oh, it was crazy. I was lucky to be there thanks to CAF. And it was unbelievable. It's certainly the highlight of my life. Winning WAFCON, I always dreamt it, but I never thought it would be a reality. And it was. There were about nearly 60,000 people in the stadium. You couldn't fit anything more, and there were probably another 60,000 outside. There was incredible support, but that certainly is a highlight of my life.
And we supposed to defend the title this later this year, but it's going to be a struggle. It's not going to be the same.
No, it's going to be extremely difficult to defend that title because other countries have made massive progress. The top one being Morocco, who we defeated in the final of the WAFCON. They have so many players now based in France because they're so close to France. So most of their players play there in the highest leagues. Many countries have grown, and like you have countries now who've got in very experienced foreign coaches, women have come there, that and I think they're going to make huge progress in this AFCON. So it's going to be extremely difficult, a big challenge with a lot of competition, but we must hope that we can go through and do well again.
Let's shift direction slightly. Your other love, music.
Yeah, music. I think that was always the dilemma in my life, which path to take. And once in my youth, I played in rock bands, and we did weddings, and we did the Olympic send-off, and we did massive functions. But I think the highlight of my life was when I got into, in latter years, a band called Basadi, Women of Jazz,
Yes.
which was three ladies from Soweto who played in the London Philharmonic Orchestra. They were damn good, flute, clarinet, whatever. And we started Basadi, me and Mabatu, and the band just took off. And we were so fortunate to once have play for Nelson Mandela at his house in Pretoria for a big function. I never thought that would be possible. We also met Nelson Mandela with Banyana, which was a highlight of my life. But with Basadi, we were selected to represent Africa at a World Jazz Festival in London. And were flown there. We were flown to Vic Falls to launch British Airways. So with that band, I saw the world. And I wasn't really a jazz musician at all. I was a rock and roller. So I had to learn to play African jazz. And fortunately, I had a great teacher in Vangali. And I used to just look at him playing the bass guitar and copy what he was doing. And often at big gigs in Moratelli Park and whatever, guys would come up to me afterwards, serious African jazz guys, and say, "You're not playing that, it's a recording." And I'd often have to play for them
just to show them,
myself,
yeah.
to show them that I was actually playing this stuff, because it was so true to the original, and I didn't even know that because I was just learning from Vangali.
And which was your best instrument?
Well, I love the bass guitar. I think I also played drums in Basadi and in many other bands, and six string I was quite talented on guitar, but I think bass guitar was the one I think I was really the most happy with.
Being in a rock band, you also had love for motorbikes.
Yeah, I was a biker from young, and I loved motorbikes. I rode in many gangs in my time, and it was another way of life that I thoroughly enjoyed, was biking. But as I got older and my health was not so great, I had to sell the bike. So it was very depressing, but that's life.
Let's talk about your awards. You recently received last year, was it? The Lifetime Achievement Award from SAFA. What did that mean to you?
Well, a lot. I think,
And you're the first woman to
yeah,
actually receive it.
first woman to get it. And it meant a lot to me because CASAFA are the trendsetters in Africa when it comes to women's football. There's no two ways about it. They've had CASAFA tournament since the 90s, whatever they started, I think, to early 2000. And they have been the trendsetters, having senior championships, under 20, under 17 for women. So they have made a massive difference in our football. And to be recognized by them was fantastic. Um, Also, of course, to receive some years back the presidential the Steve Tretty Lifetime Achievement Award from government. And that was so special to me because in my struggles when we started as part of SAFA, the one I was forever in contact with and would come to our tournaments and be there was Steve Tretty, the late Steve Tretty. So it made the honor even bigger that it was an award in his name. So those are things I'm hugely honored with amongst the awards.
And speaking of COSAFA, you and the CEO of COSAFA, Sue, were handpicked by FIFA for a mentorship program.
Yeah, that was a huge honor too in my life. Was of course, I was fortunate that in 2000 I was the coach of Banyana and took the team from nowhere up to, we lost, of course, to Nigeria in the abandoned
Again.
final again. And after that, FIFA contacted me and said, look, who are you? Where do you come from? Do you want to come and do some work for FIFA? So I thought, my goodness, what an honor. And of course, they sent me off to do a FIFA coaching course in Iran, which was really difficult at the time, but I did it. And then started with the World Cups, Canada under 20, and went to every World Cup after, and became a FIFA instructor in coaching and in admin. And then when they had this first big workshop, they invited Sue Toombs, who's done tremendous work in Africa, and me there. So we were really honored, and Sue still does incredible work. A lot of the development of women's football, especially in CASAFA, the South, is thanks to Sue. And we also have done now this is the fourth year, leadership courses with CASAFA in the 14 countries, where we bring in 2 or 3 women and mentor them to be good administrators. So I've tried in my life to give back to the sport, and that's why I try to help the women coaches by developing them, and men as well. You know, now that's still what I do, is mentoring, and so many men and women write to me all the time for information, and if I get some information, I put it on my platforms to try and develop our coaches.
Speaking of developing coaches, just the other day, we spoke about it earlier. Excuse me, you posted a picture of former players, your Mod, your Simpiwe, your Desiree Ellis, and today they are household names in terms of coaching.
Yeah, I realized that if we took former Banyana players who were interested in coaching, put them through their levels, they would have the background of having all of them played in Banyana, so they know the struggles, the everything to do with it, and make them coaches, and it's paid off. You can see the Desiree's more, everything. Janine's coming through the ranks now, and they keep developing themselves. Like Simpiwe and Janine have the UEFA B license as well, which is really not many men have that in this country. And they all have the CAF-A. I mean, we've got 23 women, and now CAF has made it compulsory for any coach to have a CAF-A or B to sit on the bench in tournaments. And the women are a step ahead. Now the guys are coming along and having to do their CAF-As, Gavin Hunt, Arthur, etc. So we were up there, and I'm really proud of that.
You also wrote a book called A Song for Banyana. First of all, excuse me, what's the book about and why the title?
Well, it's the story of my life, and it's, in my opinion, a guidebook for women coming into football, because it's all my experiences and struggles and how I overcame them and have achieved what I've achieved. And I called it a song for Banyana because I wrote a song for Banyana specifically, that's in many languages. And Sasol, the main sponsor of Banyana for so many years, the lifeblood, I always say, of Banyana, they bought that song from me. I wrote with my friend Leon, and they used that song at every Banyana competition where the national team played, or they had the Sasol League Championships every year. They have a championships where the best teams come. Whenever the teams came out, they'd play that song called Hola Banyana.
Yes.
It's still online. You can Google it. And that was, for me, such a magic moment that I'd written the song and the girls could walk onto the field listening to a song about them. So that's why I decided to call it a song for Banyana, to praise Banyana, and also because I had the song. But the gist of the book is about my life in all its spheres, as you've mentioned. Music, it's not just about football. Music, the biking, my life, my family, who are very important to me. The grandsons who now take up most of my life and spend
Yeah.
all my money. But that's what the book's about.
Just the other day, you posted a picture of yourself and Nelson Mandela. I mean, it's a October 2009 picture, 19 years old. What was happening there? And you seem to have a special relationship with Madiba, so to speak.
Yes, I think as a person, and to have met him twice as a musician and with Banyana, many people in the world would give anything to meet with him even once. And what happened was that when he was president and even after, Bafana always met with him, and it really annoyed me. And I wrote so many letters. I was great at writing letters. In fact, a man called T.M. Zashi, who
Oh,
was the
Jamjas,
Toby
yes.
T.M. Zashi, he was the head of sport in government at one point. And I wrote to him all the time, and the late Steve Chweti. And I was once at a function, and Toby said, in my whole life, I never got as many letters as I got from Fran Hilton-Smith in 1 month or something, complaining about the treatment of women's football. So I kept writing, and they'd always write back and say, "Oh, Madiba's busy with this, or he's in Mozambique or something." And then, fortunately, this one day I got a letter back saying, "Oh, actually, he didn't go away. He's here. Can you come with Banyana?" And luckily, we
And that
were
was a
in
shock to
camp.
you.
Oh, it was a shock. I was over the moon. We were leaving for Nigeria. So we piled all the girls in the bus and screamed off to his house in Santon there. And the girls were all lined up ready to meet him. And he came out. He was elderly already, with Zelda, the crunchy on his stick, whatever. And the incredible thing for me was that he took the time to talk to every single girl and ask them how they were, and even went to the extent of, when he spoke to Janine van Wyk, of speaking to her in Afrikaans,
Oh, wow.
after all he'd been through in Robben Island, etc. And it was absolutely incredible. He spoke to me, he spoke to everybody, and we were there for about an hour. And I think any girl that was there, myself included, will never forget that. He had this aura around him, you just felt this presence. It was a highlight of my life specifically.
You mentioned just a short while ago that family is very important to you, and I see you don't go anywhere without your beloved Dara.
No, I don't. She's been a part of my life for 37 years now. I dragged her into football. She wasn't a football person. She was actually a nursing sister. But I needed people to manage Banyana, and I said, well, you can do it if you can do nursing. And she was in a pharmaceutical. I said, come. And she made a huge difference in women's football, really contributed to the success of Banyana. If you look at the first photo of the team in 93, they were all wearing skirts, kicking and screaming because they didn't want to wear
No.
skirts. But she added a lot of value to the team, and in football went on to be the brand manager of Kaizer Chiefs for 20 years. For a woman, that's really exceptional. So she's very important. My sister is very important. My family, my nephew and niece, and of course the grandsons, who are the priority now, big already, not boys
I see
anymore,
they're tall
men.
boys. Oh,
Yeah,
tall men now.
yeah, 16 and 18 next month. So yeah, it's my life is fulfilled, and I'm very happy in what I'm doing. And of course, I like to travel because I've seen the world thanks to FIFA, but I want to keep seeing it.
You and Dara, you came out at a time when same-sex relationships was not big out there. How has the journey been like?
Well, tough, initially very tough, but now I hope we are kind of examples of success in a relationship, I think, and we try and be role models to people, and I hope that's worked.
And I see you often post pictures about flowers, fruit in your garden. So you're an avid gardener.
Yeah, I am. I love gardening. I love planting millies and things, and trying to be self-sufficient in life and encouraging other people to do that. I think if everyone was more into gardening and growing their own vegetables, etc., we'd be a healthier nation and more self-sufficient. So I love doing that. It keeps me busy and out of trouble.
And does it keep you grounded as well?
Yes, it does. I love doing that because it brings you close to nature, and nature is really calming.
And how important is that family structure that you spoke about, es- especially in women's football where things are sometimes tough?
No, it's to have family is the most important thing. And I remember at the HPC, uh, a lot of the girls who came had no family. And that's often a problem in our culture in South Africa, is that there's no father present, or the children generally grow up with a granny and the parents are working to keep surviving. So it's important to instill a family environment. And even when Banyana come to the national team or the under 2017, we try and create in the technical staff a warm environment where the players can grow and feel safe and have someone to talk to and share their problems. And I had such resistance in Banyana was to bring in a team psychologist or mental coach, and it was just seen as not in the culture, to be honest. And I had to fight like crazy to have at the time a fantastic woman called Nomsa Nkuna, who's a sports
Yes,
psychologist.
no, sir.
But these children, and even with the men footballers, have so many issues in their life and problems. And if they don't have workshops and someone to talk to, it affects their performance. And the coach can't sit talking to the players about their problems. Their hands are full trying to win matches. So that was very important for me, still is, to have a family type environment in football, in the teams.
As we wrap up, Franny, you were not happy when you left SAFA back in 2019. You even mentioned that you were actually pushed out when you were not done with your mission. Do you still hold grudges? Do you still?
Yeah, I do. I'm still not happy about that. I hope one day I can go back and carry on what I was doing. But I was not happy to be retired off. Yes, I was over the retirement age, but I was still incredibly busy. I had big FIFA projects, government projects. I was getting a lot of funding and doing coaching courses. I trained 87 women administrators in with FIFA stuff. So I felt I was still very useful and had a lot to offer. So when I was retired, I was very angry. I still am, but I hope one day I can. And I still mentor all the coaches. Anyone who wants something comes to me. I'm the library of SAFA. My house is packed to the hilt.
I know I've
So,
been there.
yeah, yeah.
Looking back, do you think women's football has grown from your days when you were still manager, when you're starting out
Yeah,
the game?
absolutely. I think now seeing women playing professional football around the world, like Tembi Khatlani, Jermaine, there's so many of them, Hilda. Um, I think now women can make a career out of football and earn big, big money. Whereas in my time, and still women can't make a living out of football. So I hope that continues to grow. I wish we'd get more sponsors. We only have Cecil Hollywood, and we need a professional league, that's for sure, so we can keep our players at home, pay them that they can really get something out of playing football. So I think it's grown immensely, but there's still a lot of work to do, especially in grassroots. And we don't have, which we need, like interprovincials at senior under 19. We used to have it, but we don't have it now. But we need grassroots, definitely.
Sasol has been with women's football in South Africa since 2009. How much of a game changer have they been?
Massive. We wouldn't be anywhere. We wouldn't be anywhere without Cecil. They deserve all praise, all recognition. They made the difference with the Cecil League, everything. And of course, now we have the top up with Hollywood Bets. But we need more sponsors. I've never understood why people don't come and sponsor women's football, because women are the buyers, they the shoppers in the main, and provide these companies with their profits. So they should be pumping in far more.
And what changes would you like to see in women's football, other than what we've spoken about sponsors coming on board?
Well, I'd like to see the growth, especially in rural areas. I'd like to see far more coaches and administration, women coming through, and men who have the sport at heart to ensure that it grows and we can remain African champions and remain going to the World Cups. And one day we achieved a miracle in Sydney by getting into the last 16, which is an absolute dream come true. And now we need to get into the top 10 or the top 5. We've got to keep pushing the limits.
What memory stands out for you in women's football, for you personally, be it in South Africa, be it on the continent or around the world?
Well, the memories for me is going to the World Cups and watching USA, who were the role models. But the highlight of my life, of course, was qualifying for Olympics, World Cup, and winning the WAFCON. I mean, those are your dreams. That's what I aimed for since I started in football. Never thinking in my lifetime, which is in overtime now. I've had my 3 score and 10, but I never dreamt I'd see it in reality, and I have, and that makes me so happy. And it must encourage other women, men to live their dreams. I've lived my dreams, and they've come true.
And speaking of those tournaments that you attended with South Africa, listening to the national anthem at those venues.
Yeah, it's you can't explain it. The goosebumps, the listening to the anthem and seeing the girls running out there on these world stages is has made my life fulfilled, because I know some of the girls who were there, and when I was coaching, managing, they know all I ever spoke about was going to the World Cup. It was the cherry on the top, playing with Marta. playing with these top players, and now they're doing it. And some of them are even playing in leagues with them overseas. And that's where every woman footballer wants to be, is there in that arena.
You've been quoted several times saying you never made money from football.
That's true. I never did. The women were always paid less than the men. I was paid less than the men. It was women's football was always a hassle and a cost. It was an expense, and everything was a struggle. And even I remember before I left, the girls were still sharing boots with the boys and with each other, and it was just ridiculous. And it really used to annoy me, even when it came to the payments. In football, the men earned a fortune and the women earned very little. Luckily, now we've sort of come to a balance. But I think the women should get exactly what the men get. And in fact, seeing as they're the African champions, which the men are still trying to achieve after 96 hours, 30 years later, I think the women should earn more than the men, because they've achieved far, far more. Far. They've been to the World Cup, the Olympics, champions. So I think women's football deserves far more respect from the federation, from sponsors, and they deserve to be recognized far more than they are.
Friend, what do you make of the Hollywood Bet Super League?
Hollywood bets?
Super League.
Well, it's fantastic. I think that was just the cherry on the top. We had the Cecil League, now the Hollywood has come in. But I still believe we need the professional league, and because then women can make a living. I know some of the teams really struggle. It's fine for the teams like Sundowns, TS Galaxy, the universities who have money. But if you look at the other teams like JVW, Durban Ladies, there's so many who have no funding. That money from the Hollywood bets they get hardly covers their expenses. And they can't get players, better players. And we have in women's football the same problem that we have in the men's football, where teams like Sundowns, TS Galaxy can take the women players because they can offer them a lot more money than the rest of the women's teams, the Durban Ladies, JVW, etc. And that, I think, prevents the growth of the game, because a lot of those players, like with the men, the coach, Bruce, is always moaning, sit on the bench and are not playing. So it's a problem. But anyway, we hope that a sponsor will sometime come and help you, or government.
And looking at that camera, there's an administrator, a coach, a young girl who could be watching this. And what would your words to them say? Words of encouragement in this camera?
Okay, for me, my words of encouragement would be that I achieved a lot with nothing, and you must never give up hope. Always believe that you can achieve anything. And if you go and read my book, you will know you can achieve anything with nothing.
And lastly, how do you like to be remembered, Franny?
As someone who made a difference, who left a legacy. That's how I want to be remembered. Someone who made a difference. And I believe I made a difference. I struggled like hell. It wasn't easy. But now I can sit back and look at all my products succeeding in football, rising up the ladder. Some are at FIFA. Desiree's there now, Shalina, whatever. So I can see the woman that I initially helped to get on the path succeeding. And that's my dream come true, that I made a difference.
Franny, thank you so much.
Thanks, Matlamala. I
Really
appreciate your time.
Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I did. It was wonderful. I love sharing my story to encourage others.
Thank you so much. That was all the time we had for you with our legend here, very extraordinary person, Fran Hilton-Smith, joining us on One-on-One with Matlamula Moraka, the women's story. And till next time, from me, it's bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Be strong.